So, not too long ago, Studio Ghibli started their annual Ghibli Fest, as they call it, which is currently running in theaters nationwide until the end of the year. For those unaware of what Ghibli Fest is, it's an event that Ghibli does every year where they show some of their most beloved films in theaters in the United States. It's a really great event and very popular too, and I personally always love attending it. Studio Ghibli is one of the most acclaimed animation studios ever, and really just one of the most acclaimed film studios of all time. They have created so many magical, incredibly deep animated films that appeal to both casual viewers and hardcore cinephiles alike. They've really made a name for themselves in the greater scope of film, and there's not really a studio quite like them out there. Recently, I went to go see their re-showing of The Secret World of Arrietty, which, funny enough, was actually my first ever Ghibli film that I personally ever saw. And so, as I sat there witnessing this Ghibli classic that had introduced me to this wonderful studio 15 years ago, I couldn't help but wonder to myself, why do so many Ghibli movies have such blatant autistic themes in them? Now, hear me out. In the 40 years that Studio Ghibli has existed as a prestigious animation studio with their name directly attached to quality, their films have been beloved by audiences all over the world. But interestingly enough, one particular group of people seems to connect with Ghibli movies on a much deeper level than your average person, that being people on the spectrum of autism. You can find so many different Reddit posts or TikToks or Instagram reels about autistic people talking about their love for Ghibli and why it means so much to them. It really seems like Ghibli, in a lot of ways, connects really deeply and profoundly with a lot of autistic people, but why exactly is this? Well, interestingly enough, whether this was intentional or not, a lot of Ghibli protagonists actually show different signs of autism coding. Now, when I say autism coding, I do not mean these protagonists in these movies are explicitly stated to be autistic, because they aren't. However, the term autistic coded simply refers to the fact that a lot of different autistic people might connect with different traits that these characters show, and also a lot of the really unique struggles that they go through throughout these movies. Because in a lot of ways, a lot of the different protagonists of the Ghibli movies seem to go through experiences that connect really deeply to the autistic experience. And it's actually a way that a lot of other autistic people are able to feel seen that they might not be able to get otherwise. Oftentimes, it's actually autistic coded characters who end up being better representation for autistic people than actually explicitly stated autistic characters in media. And honestly, it's just a really beautiful thing overall for autistic people to be able to connect to this. So today, I want to talk about different Ghibli protagonists that come off as autistic coded, why they're actually good autism representation in media, and perhaps most importantly, what other media can learn from these movies when trying to write for autism overall. To start, let's look at one notable Ghibli protagonist that a lot of people see as autistic, that being Ashitaka from Princess Mononoke. Princess Mononoke is actually my personal favorite Ghibli movie, and it's a film that a lot of people hold in high regard overall. It's also a very influential film, inspiring things like Avatar from James Cameron, Ahsoka from Star Wars, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and even parts of Fantasia 2000 from Disney. It's honestly just a really gorgeously animated and very well made film that explores both sides of the war between man and nature and what both sides are doing in this struggle, rather than just showing this in a very black and white sense with one side being good and the other being evil. It shows all the different nuances of both sides in this conflict and how they both feel about each other, and ultimately how they are being affected by each other both intentionally and unintentionally. The main protagonist of this film is Prince Ashitaka, who ends up killing a gigantic demon at the start of the film and is inflicted by its curse. In order to break this curse, which is inflicted on him by the boar god Nago, he must find the source of Nago's suffering and destroy it. This curse is actually very interesting since it emanates from his arm and it causes it to bulge and ooze with dark energy. It's something he's told he could very easily die from at the start of this film, but he doesn't let it stop him from trying to find the source of Nago's hatred and suffering. The curse actually will start to affect him the most in the film when he's around any sort of conflict. Like, for example, at one point in the film, San, who is the titular Princess Mononoke, the wolf princess, ends up trying to infiltrate Lady Eboshi's village and kill her. Obviously, this results in both Lady Eboshi and San fighting each other head-on, and Ashitaka actually tries to stop the both of them by intervening and coming between them. This causes his curse to get even worse in the midst of this conflict and all the noise around him. And interestingly enough, I've actually seen a lot of other autistic people read this as sort of an allegory for sensory overload. Generally, in situations with a lot of people or a lot of noise or just a lot of things going on overall, autistic people like myself can very easily get overstimulated. This is something that can cause an autistic person to become incredibly stressed in that moment or even just shut down completely, which funny enough we see Ashitaka do just a minute later when he collapses off of his deer. This on the surface could just be seen as a nasty effect of the curse, but I think the thing that really makes it resonate with autistic people and be seen as sort of an allegory for overstimulation is the way that Ashitaka ends up finding solace from the curse overwhelming him here in this moment. After falling off of his deer, San actually takes Prince Ashitaka to this cedar forest to be healed. And funny enough, basking in the cool lake water and the quiet, serene setting of the cedar forest is actually what helps heal Ashitaka from his curse. The forest spirit comes by and ends up soothing Ashitaka's curse in that exact moment. For a lot of autistic people, myself included, what often helps us when we're overstimulated is just going to a quiet place. Usually when we're in a situation where we're overstimulated, we need that peace and quiet to be able to pull back from everything else and be able to de-stress ourselves and ultimately soothe ourselves from the overstimulation. And that's honestly something that's reflected really well here in this moment with Prince Ashitaka. I know for me personally, when I'm overstimulated, I just really can't function at all, and I often do have to pull back and find that peace and quiet to be able to be recharged and able to do stuff again. And ultimately, that is what happens here with Ashitaka. After he is able to get some peace and quiet and be able to de-stress, he is able to go back on his quest and continue to find the source of Nago's corruption. And interestingly enough, this is actually another element that a lot of autistic people generally see themselves in when it comes to Ashitaka. He has a very strong sense of justice. Sort of like what I talked about when it came to Ariel in my Disney Renaissance autism video, it's a very similar thing here with Ashitaka. Much like Ariel, he also has a very strong sense of justice, and he will always do what's right no matter what. And unfortunately, just like Ariel, this will also cause him to be taken advantage of by others around him, just like the hunter that tries to use him to get to the forest spirit to kill it. The hunter is able to see that Ashitaka has very clearly strong morals and does take advantage of this for his own personal gain. This, unfortunately, is something that a lot of autistic people I imagine can relate to, and sadly I myself do as well. But despite everything that happens to him in this film and everything he encounters, like literally being cursed to die, Ashitaka doesn't let that stop him from spreading real kindness to everybody around him. He has a real strong sense of justice and a real drive to just do good to people around him, and that's honestly really enlightening and inspiring to see. I would much rather take Ashitaka as autism representation rather than Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory or music or something like that. It does feel that oftentimes the characters that autistic people are actually able to feel seen through are just autistic coded characters as opposed to explicitly stated autistic characters. And honestly, I think that's a really great value to autistic coded characters like Ashitaka and the others I'm going to be discussing today, because really it's a way for autistic people to feel seen in a way they might not be able to otherwise. And especially when a lot of the Ghibli movies were first starting to gain mainstream appeal and popularity thanks to being distributed through Disney in the 90s and 2000s, autistic kids didn't really have all that great of representation in popular media at the time, so this is a way they could feel seen in a way they just really weren't able to elsewhere. It's honestly a really beautiful thing, and I think the more I've gotten older, the more I've realized why I connected so much with Ghibli or Disney as a kid, and it's because of stuff like this. If you'd like to see a follow-up to the last Disney video, by the way, with me discussing more autistic coded Disney protagonists, let me know in the comments below. Another Ghibli character that a lot of people on the spectrum usually end up connecting with as well is actually Kiki from Kiki's Delivery Service. Kiki's Delivery Service stars a young witch in training who's named Kiki, who has just turned 13 in this movie. Now that she's 13, she ends up moving into a big city, which apparently all young witches must do at that age, taking her familiar spirit, a talking black cat named Gigi, with her. Kiki looks for a place to live and work in her newfound city, ends up doing exactly that by starting a witch delivery service at a local bakery. And for a while, this is something that she absolutely loves doing and really throws herself into. She is completely dedicated to her work and her craft and try and make those around her happy with her delivery service. However, over time, she finds that her enjoyment for her work starts to wane, and she finds herself getting burnt out and rather depressed as well. These feelings also come at the cost of her being able to use her magic as well, and she can't even understand her cat anymore, and she also loses her ability to fly in a broom. This, of course, causes her to entirely suspend her business for a bit and have to take a break. During this time, Kiki actually ends up visiting a friend of hers who is a painter, who lets Kiki know that what she's suffering from might be a form of artist block shock or burnout. She ends up telling Kiki that she should find something else to fill her time with for now so that she can regain her powers and her ability to do what she was doing and her drive over time. Kiki's delivery service is easily one of the most iconic Studio Ghibli films and definitely one of the most beloved, but funny enough, it's also one of the ones that resonates with autistic people the most. And it's actually because of this element of the film because a lot of autistic people liken what Kiki goes through here to autistic burnout. Usually, when an autistic person becomes extremely passionate or hyperfixated on something, they will really throw themselves into it, much like what Kiki does here for her delivery service. Her delivery service is very clearly something she is very passionate and hyperfixated on, and she really goes all in on it because of that. However, it's because of all that energy she's just throwing into that hyperfixation that it becomes very hard for her to do anything else, and eventually she does get burnt out. This is a very common thing for autistic people overall, and I know I myself have definitely experienced a lot of moments like this as well. Sometimes when I get very hyperfixated on something, or when I'm really throwing myself into a video, I find it hard to be able to break away to do other things. Because ultimately, doing YouTube is my job, but it's also something I'm very passionate about. I am very hyperfixated on film, animation, games, and all the other things that I discuss here on this channel. And there definitely have been moments in the past where I've thrown myself too hard into a project and get too burnt out on it. Thankfully these days, it's a lot easier for me to not get burnt out doing what I do here, but I know for me and a lot of other autistic people, seeing these struggles here in Kiki's delivery service is a really relatable thing. It's ultimately through learning to step back and take a break and maybe move on to a different hyperfixation that Kiki is able to find the drive and love again for doing what she used to do. And all that passion immediately comes flooding back, which is amazing. This is usually something that autistic people will end up doing as well. When they get burnt out on one hyperfixation, they'll often move on to something else, and then over time, they might come back to that previous hyperfixation. This is something that's very well represented here in Kiki's delivery service, and honestly, it's just really a good way for people that struggle with autistic burnout to be able to feel seen. But you know, it does kind of make me wonder, what sorts of deals was Kiki offering to those who were frequent customers of her delivery service? Was she giving longtime customers a 20% discount perhaps? Or maybe she offered buy one get one free deals to people that bought multiple items? Well, fortunately for you, you won't have to worry about what kind of deals you can get with the sponsor of today's video, Coupert. Are you looking to get the best deals online when shopping for your favorite clothes, movies, games, and other goods? Well, just like Kiki with her magic powers, Coupert is here to help. Coupert is a free browser extension designed to help you save money while shopping online. Once you install it, it'll automatically give you the best deals when shopping for your favorite things. You can install it on all your favorite browsers from Chrome to Edge to Firefox and so many more. With 6 million weekly active users on desktop and 3 million on mobile, Coupert serves over 200,000 merchants globally. Wow, that's even more than the amount of people that Kiki delivers to in a week. Coupert offers 3 core services: automatic coupon testing, cashback rewards, and price comparison service. I was able to use their price comparison service to score a great deal for myself on The Boy and the Heron 4K Blu-ray from Studio Ghibli. If you're looking to get the best deal on your next purchase as well, I can't recommend Coupert enough. You can even earn cash back as well from select retailers like Walmart, Macy's, Sephora, and so many more. And you can end up redeeming that through a gift card, PayPal, or a bank card. So if you're looking to be like Kiki and swoop in on your broom to snag some great deals, use the link in the description to install Coupert today. Coupert is the way to save. Thanks again to Coupert for sponsoring today's video. And now back to today's video. So now that we've discussed both Ashitaka and Kiki, another big Ghibli character that often does have a lot of qualities that autistic people resonate, believe it or not, is actually No Face from Spirited Away. No Face is an outcast spirit that Chihiro ends up befriending within the spirit world when she's trapped there, without knowing that the rest of the spirit world actually views him as a monster. He is pretty much feared and shunned by everybody in this realm, and he's also not allowed in the bathhouse that Chihiro works at. However, of course, Chihiro doesn't really know this, and she ends up letting him in thinking he's just another customer, which technically he is. As No Face continues to stay in the bathhouse for longer, he starts conjuring gold and giving it to the employees, thinking that is how to gain their favor. He also swallows 3 characters and starts speaking in their voices and adopting their physical characteristics. While upon first coming into the bathhouse, he was a foggy black blob with a mask, he ends up transforming into a huge mask with a receding hairline, frog legs, and a gaping mouth where his stomach is after eating these people, and also taking on their characteristics, and he even ends up talking through these characters as well. Upon seeing that being around all these other people has made No-Face someone entirely different from who he was before, Chihiro makes him spit up the 3 people he ate and they take the train together, on the way to go see Zeniba the Good Witch. Interestingly enough, because No-Face clearly does have a desire to feel accepted by those around him and also directly adopts the traits of people around him in order to try and do that, a lot of people have taken him as an allegory for autistic masking. A lot of times in order to try and fit in with the people around them, autistic people will adopt the traits of neurotypical people, or maybe just other people they have in their life. They'll usually push down and hide their own autistic traits in order to try and adopt the mannerisms of people around them to try and fit in. This is called autistic masking, and it's a very common thing for autistic people to do overall in order to try to fit in with those around them. And here we see that actually very accurately portrayed with a character like No-Face, who is literally adopting the characteristics of people around them by consuming them, and also very clearly desperately wants to fit in with everybody too. He creates gold to try to win the favor of the people in the bathhouse since he's otherwise just ostracized and shunned by them. And he ends up eating 3 people in the bathhouse in order to absorb their traits so he can try to fit in even more. Ultimately, No-Face is a very lonely spirit and he so desperately wants to have someone in his life that just accepts him for who he is. He feels like that's impossible, so that's why he feels like he has to take on the traits of other people around him. And this is exactly the reason that autistic people mask as well. It's used to try and fit in with people around them since they often feel like they can't otherwise. And honestly, it's really cool to see that very accurately portrayed here if you choose to interpret it that way through No-Face. But thankfully, the cool thing about this is that No-Face actually does get a happy ending here. After arriving at Zeniba's place with Chihiro, he ends up finding solace here. Chihiro and Zeniba don't like him just because he gives out gold or anything. Quite the opposite, in fact. They just like him for being him. They don't really care that he can conjure gold at all. They just like who he is. And honestly, that's kind of the dream for any autistic person at the end of the day, just to have a place where you feel like you belong and where you feel like you're accepted for who you are. It's honestly a really nice thing to see reflected here as well. Another character that a lot of people think is autistic coded as well from Studio Ghibli is none other than Howl from Howl's Moving Castle. Howl is a wizard that the main character of the film, Sophie, ends up falling in love with. After being transformed into an old lady by a witch, she ends up working for Howl while trying to break her curse. It's during this time she ends up having to care for Howl, and here we see a lot of the autistic traits that people generally see in him. Howl's somebody who is very routine oriented. He doesn't like people messing with or reorganizing any of his things. And this is something that he admittedly comes into conflict with Sophie over at first. He also does appear to have some sort of sensory issue with clothes especially, and even food, since Marco at one point says Master Howl barely eats. Howl constantly has to have control over his cooking and how it's made too, which is very much an autistic trait since this is something a lot of autistic people do overall. They may have a specific way they like a meal prepared, or maybe there's only certain foods they eat due to sensory issues. Autistic people can be seen as picky eaters, quote unquote, because of this, but really it's just them trying to find the foods that stimulate them the most. And that's absolutely something reflected within Howl here in my opinion. But I think the thing I like about this is that it doesn't dehumanize him as a character at all. Howl is still very much shown to be a competent wizard, and he does save Sophie a lot of times in this movie. His autistic traits are not something that infantilize him or dehumanize him at all, they're just parts of him and who he is. And really, I think you could say that for any of the autistic coded characters I've discussed so far overall, and I wish this was something that more media took note of overall when trying to write autistic characters. So often, media tends to create characters that are just infantilized and simply exist to lift up neurotypical characters in the same story. They can often come off more like soulless robots or cuddly pets than actual people, and I think that's a big reason why autistic people tend to gravitate a lot more to characters that are just autistic coded, since they tend to be better written and they can often see themselves in them a lot easier. I would much rather take Howl's Moving Castle over The Unbreakable Boy or Music any day. Yet another Ghibli character that a lot of people tend to see autistic coding in is actually Suzuki from Whisper of the Heart. This is definitely a very unique entry in the Ghibli pantheon overall, since it's a very grounded story about a young girl who wants to become a writer. This is a film that I think actually speaks to wannabe artists and creators creators a lot in particular. It taps into the desire of wanting to create something and adding something to the world around you really well, in my opinion. And funny enough, this movie is actually the origin of the lo-fi girl meme, so there's your fun fact for the day. But Shizuku is also a character that a lot of people see as autistic coded, since much like Kiki, she's someone that really throws herself into her work and her hyperfixations as well. Throughout this film, she's trying to write a story about a cat that she saw in an antique shop, and she wants to be able to give this story to the antique shop's owner and also the antique shop's owner's son to try and impress him. But it's very clear she actually does have passion for this, and she is trying her best to create the best possible story that she can. She absolutely throws herself into this, spending countless hours trying to perfect her story to the best of her ability and make it just right. Unfortunately, much like how all autistic hyperfixations go, this does cause Shizuku to lose track of everything else that's happening around her. And while trying to perfect this story to the best of her ability, her grades admittedly do slip in school, causing her parents to get upset at her. Despite this though, she doesn't let that stop her, and she does finish the story and gets it to be how she wants. Much like all the other characters we've discussed here too, she has an incredible drive, and once she starts doing something, she won't quit until she thinks she's done it right. Shizuku is honestly one of my favorite autistic coded characters out of this entire bunch, and I also just think her movie in general is a really great movie for anyone to watch who wants to be an artist or a creator. It really does speak to the creative experience overall and the desire to make things for those around you. Very much recommend checking out Whisper of the Heart if you haven't already. It's a bit underrated in my opinion. Another one that a lot of autistic people relate to is The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, specifically the main character in that film, Princess Kaguya. The Tale of the Princess Kaguya is actually based on the popular Japanese folktale, The Tale of the Bamboo Cutter. It tells the story of a bamboo cutter who discovers a small girl inside of a bamboo shoot and believes her to be a divine presence and takes her in as his own daughter. Already you can see that the way that Kaguya was brought into her parents' life is very unusual. But in addition to this, the way she views the world around her is completely different than her peers. And this is something that both amazes and frustrates her parents throughout the course of this film. They do expect her to behave as a quote-unquote proper lady since this is feudal Japan and there are restrictions on what women can do around this time. She can't show emotion and she has to basically stay silent always too. She's in a lot of ways really just restricted from being able to be herself, which is definitely something that a lot of autistic people go through as well. And that is especially even more true if they feel like they have to mask around other people all the time. When an autistic person is expected to mask around neurotypical people and behave the way they are instead of just being their normal autistic self, it can actually have a lot of negative mental effects on the autistic person as well, and we actually see Kaguya go through a lot of this in this movie. There are a lot of moments in this film that we see Kaguya just incredibly depressed because she feels like she's not understood by the people around her and that people are always telling her to just not be herself. She feels like she's constantly under scrutiny and she's held to such a different standard than everybody else around her, which makes her really uncomfortable. These kinds of ostracizing feelings are really common with autistic people overall, so it's really refreshing to see it portrayed so realistically with Princess Kaguya. A lot of autistic women have mentioned how they relate to Kaguya and see themselves in her struggles, which is a really good thing because even to this day, it's still really hard for a woman to get diagnosed with autism. Things have definitely gotten better for sure, but even in 2025, it's a lot easier for a male to get diagnosed with autism still over a female. So it's honestly really great that there's good female autism-coded representation like this. It allows them to feel seen in a way they might not be able to otherwise. The last example that I want to bring up of an autistic-coded Ghibli character is actually Anna from When Marnie Was There, who is highly recommended for this video by a lot of people. Funny enough, before making this video, I'd actually never seen When Marnie Was There, but now that I've actually watched it, I can absolutely see why Anna is an autistic coded character that a lot of people like. Anna is the lead protagonist in When Marnie Was There, since while Marnie is the titular character, she's technically not the focal point here. It all focuses on Anna. Anna is someone whose character struggle is made very clear at the start of the film, with there being an opening monologue about how she feels there's an invisible wall separating her from being able to connect with anyone else.
In this world, there's an invisible magic circle. There's an inside and an outside. And I'm outside.
In the film's opening shot, we see her just sitting alone and drawing while everything else is going on around her. Children are running around, people are playing in the playground, but she's just sitting there in her own space, zoned out completely, just drawing. As someone who grew up with a lot of people that love sports, and I often was present at many a different sports game in my childhood, this is definitely something that I personally relate to, since I would often just be drawing or writing at these games. I was never really one for sports, and even to this day, I'm still really not. I've just kind of always been into the things that other autistic people are generally into. And that's really reflected very well here with Anna, since she's completely just lost in this drawing and doesn't really care about anything else going on around her. But it's also because of this that she feels very isolated and alone, and like nobody really gets her. And it's really only later in the film when she actually meets Marnie that she's able to find someone that sees a lot of the same things the way she does and makes her feel seen. This is a really common thing for autistic people overall, since really autistic people understand each other on a much deeper level than neurotypical people understand each other. It runs a lot deeper, and there's a lot more nuances and behaviors that autistic people are gonna understand within each other that just aren't present in neurotypical people. And honestly, I think that's reflected really well here between Marnie and Anna. It's super wholesome and really charming. And it especially makes more sense when the final twist of the film comes, which I won't spoil here, obviously. But if you haven't seen when Marnie was there yet, I definitely recommend it. I was pleasantly surprised with this one. Overall, it's just honestly really nice to see that there's a lot of great autistic coded Ghibli characters out there. Especially during a time when it seems like Hollywood and mainstream media are still kind of finding their way when it comes to creating explicitly stated autistic characters. It's honestly really refreshing to be able to see all these different autistic coded characters in Studio Ghibli films. At this moment in time, it's unclear whether Studio Ghibli will ever make another film or not, since their last film, The Boy and the Heron, which won Best Animated Feature by the way, seemed kind of final seeming. It almost seemed like the culmination of a lot of the efforts of Ghibli's films over the years, since there were so many elements of other films in that film, and it seemed kind of like a greatest hits album if anything. And The Boy and the Heron also was a really great film on its own merit too. I guess it remains to be seen if they'll make another movie or not, but if they do, I trust them to make another great autistic coded character to go with it. Really glad to see Ghibli having been so consistent with this over the years, and also just making great movies overall. But what do you think? Am I wrong? Do Ghibli's movies actually suck? Are none of these protagonists autistic coded? Let me know in the comments below. Regardless, thank you for coming to the end of this video, and I hope you enjoyed it or learned something new from it. If you enjoyed this video overall, consider subscribing, since I do a lot of videos like this in general covering film and animation, so if you like this video, you'll probably like the other videos I have planned as well. You can also join my Discord to suggest things for me to cover here on YouTube, or leave a comment down below suggesting what I should cover next. You can also check out my letterbox to see different movies and shows that I've reviewed in general that I haven't reviewed on YouTube before. You can also follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, all the things. All the links are down in the description below there. Special thanks to Trayvon Gibson, DDC1996, Sparky Fluffles, MNBY123, You the Guardian, David Deister, Jared the Rabbit, and Balf Games for supporting me as YouTube members and patrons as well. I really appreciate you guys a ton, and thank you for pitching in with the extra monetary effort to keep me doing what I do here. And thank you for coming to the end of this video, and hope I'll see you in the next one. But for now, I've been Otterly Noah, and I'll see you on the other side. Bye!